أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. We are with you with a new topic, a new series that we are going to start talking about throughout this month and probably will continue beyond this month. We will make it really short, 10, maybe 12 minutes. We'll go really fast, so we're not going to present a lot of evidence. We're going to present stories. We're going to present some of the details, but later on, inshallah, on the MQ Live, for those of you who attend the Zoom session, they will have a chance to listen to a lot of the details and the evidence that we provide. All right. Thank you. Inshallah, we'll start right away. The topic is the trouble with organized religion. I know this is a shocking title, but I hope, inshallah, that you guys will remain with us. It's just 10, 12 minutes, and inshallah, you will see for yourself that we are presenting some major landmark type of revelations and new understanding of the Quran like you've never seen it before. All right, we get started, inshallah, with the presentation right away. In this presentation, we're gonna talk about this concept that deals with all the stories in the Quran. You're gonna understand all the stories in the Quran. You're gonna understand why there is so much focus on Bani Isra'il in the Quran. You're gonna understand why Musa occupies such a big space in the Quran. You're going to understand exactly what the role of Muhammad as a Nabi and what the role of Muhammad as a Rasul and how they changed the future of mankind. We're going to get through it very quickly, inshallah. Before I start, I just want to make sure that everything is well on the feed, and if you can give me a thumbs up of some sort, that would be great. Thank you very much. All right, so this is the chart. This is that chart of the whole Quran. You're gonna understand. It's one theme that runs through the whole Quran, and if you understand the theme, you understand everything that is told to us in the Quran. It has a perspective. This is a container that brings together all of the revelations, all of the amazing knowledge of the Quran in one single theme. So it's a coherent, consistent book, the scripture of the Quran, and you will understand, inshallah. So it talks basically about the spiritual evolutionary stages of mankind. This is what the main message of the Quran to mankind is. So inshallah, we're gonna get started, and we're gonna start on step number 1 or stage number 1, Nuh in the Quran. Nuh, as we see in here, Nuh, we are told in the Quran that he tried to address people, tried to invite people, but the main mission of Nuh is that the main characteristic of Noah, is that he learns proper terminology to speak, to communicate with the divine. Is there a proper communication with the divine? Yeah, this is exactly what the message is. The Quran starts us very easy by saying there's a special language, there is a special locution, and it's not about Arabic or English. It's not about that. It's about the terms and the understanding and the imagery and the metaphorical language that is unique to the way we communicate with the divine. So Nuh starts by learning this proper terminology. Of course, he has asked for it. God and Allah and the Malaika help him with that. Then he notices that as he invites his community to follow in the same way, they start making fun of him. Those who reject him, eventually we're told, they drown in the sea of confusion. This sea of confusion is man-made inventions and things that human beings made for themselves as a system, and they end up drowning. No, there is no ship. Please take that out of your head. There is no ship. The traditional story, the fable about this big ship carrying the animals, of course, the Quran has nothing to do with that. And inshallah, you will see that in time, inshallah. So after I give you the high-level helicopter view in this very, very short segment, you're gonna, inshallah, join me later for one segment at a time where we dive into every one of those stops. So So this is sort of the first step, stage number one. Stage number two is when Ibrahim comes on the scene. Ibrahim is told or explained or described in the Quran as Hanif. What does Hanif mean? We explained it in so many segments before on this channel. Hanif literally means someone who veers off a group. So there's a group of some sort, and Hanif is someone who takes away, who takes off differently from this group. So he's described as Hanif. Why? He basically, in a summary, rejects organized religion. He rejects any affiliation with a group, with a with a group or with a government of some sort, or state, or any kind of opportunity for a dominant power to control the minds of people. This is how we should understand Ibrahim. So he is opposed to mind control, to mass indoctrination, to a group following blindly the practices that they just learned from their forefathers. That's really simple. It's very simple, basic message of Ibrahim. That's what it means to be Hanif. So he confronts his father and his community about the organized religion, the concept of group practices, and he says, I have nothing to do with this, and you guys are worshiping idols. It's not physical idols that we need to understand this context in. We need to understand that the idols that Ibrahim was talking about as, the communal practices that usually, inevitably serve the leaders of those communities. This is what he's opposed to. He is confident that there is a divine. He is confident that he can go search for a way to connect with the divine. And eventually, Allah describes him in the Quran as an ummah, a whole community of one. Ibrahim was an ummah, a whole community of one. Beautiful. And he is given the foreknowledge, advanced knowledge, so to speak, excuse me, that he is an imam, a leader for all future believers. This is the beautiful message of Ibrahim. If we understand these basic concepts, and you're going to see how these concepts get reinforced again and again with every story. So we go back to the chart, and next we move to Yousef, and I'm going to share with you something shockingly surprising. Yousef is presented to us in the tradition as a great prophet, Nabi. Of course, he was a great man. However, he made a very significant first move type of decision that really caused a lot of problems to mankind. I'm sorry to tell you, but you're going to learn a lot more as we get into the details in future segments. So what did Yousef do? Yousef basically, as a young boy, that's what the story in chapter 12, Surah 12 tells us. As a young boy, he starts by telling his father he aspires to wholesale proselytization of monotheism. So he believes in monotheism, one God. He says, I want all of those, the 11 planets and the star and the sun and the moon, all of them prostrating to me. That means he's in power. The very next ayah, effectively, his father tells him, shut up, don't pursue this. And I don't mean to make fun of this, but this is literally the essence of that story. Eventually, as we see, his father Yaqub warns him not to pursue that way of thinking. And after a series of unfortunate events that landed him in Misr as a slave, he finds himself in prison after prison. Of course, I'm going really fast, but you're going to get the details, inshallah, with every future segment in this series. We're gonna dive one stage at a time into a lot more details. So eventually he finds himself in prison after prison. He's invited by the king. What does he do the first time he meets the king? He asks the king to hire him. So this is a Nabi, the repository. Think of a Nabi or Anbiya, one of the Anbiya, the repository of this divine knowledge that he inherited from Yaqub and from Ibrahim. And now this person, this repository of knowledge, is put under the service to the king. This is the first in history, as we are told in the Quran. Not necessarily a good move. Again, when we get to the specific segment that deals with Yousef in the future parts of the series, you're going to hear a lot of amazing details and evidence directly from the story of Yousef. He asked the king to hire him to be in charge of information. خزائن الأرض, that's the terminology used in the story. So for the first time, religion is a department of a state. I hope you understand how significant of a shift in the history of mankind this was. So the Quran is bringing to our attention something major just happened. Something major just happened. And by the way, you're going to see that the Quran tells our beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Muhammad, who was receiving these revelations, don't be impressed with this. Don't be impressed by this story. You're going to see a lot of details. So eventually, as we will see, Surah 12, Surah Yousef tells us that Yousef regretted some of the actions and decisions he made. You're going to see with your own eyes. Again, I'm giving you teasers right now, but I want you to see the helicopter view. Let's continue with the chart. The chart continues to this part, the Pharaoh, number 4. So we go to number 4, and we understand more of the stage of Pharaoh. What happened with Pharaoh? Well, Pharaoh came in Misr a while, maybe a few hundred years after Yousef. So what did Yousef do? He introduced religion under the control of the state. Of course, that king was a good king at the time of Yousef. Fast forward, that king who started being a good king under Yousef or for Yousef eventually became a selfish, a theocrat, if you want. So the state that started with good intentions from Yousef became a theocracy. Yes, Pharaoh used religion. That's what Qarun did for him, aka Harun. We're going to see a lot more of these details, inshallah, in the future. So he employs a religious ideologue, an orator, a person who has perfect knowledge of religion, their religion at the time. Remember, that's the monotheism and the remnants of what Yousef taught them. They, Harun and Pharaoh, end up using religion to indoctrinate the masses. And this is the shift in the history of mankind as far as how religion is used. So he claims himself, Pharaoh, he claims himself to be an ilah, a source of knowledge. Eventually, we know, based on the stories in the Quran, he suppresses all dissenting voices, especially the believers in the original way of Ibrahim. We move on to Musa. Musa comes on the stage. Musa becomes obsessed with, first let's talk a little bit about the history. I'm going to tell you more details with a lot of evidence when we come to the part about Musa. I'm sure you're excited to hear about that. Surprise, Musa was not raised in Pharaoh's palace. The Quran tells us exactly what he was raised. He was raised in secret in his mother's house. You're going to hear all the details. Please, empty your cup, accept the evidence as we will present it from the Quran, then you can make a decision. Eventually, he is discovered. He's not supposed to stay in his mother's house. We're going to see that. Eventually, he is discovered by Pharaoh and his legions. There's a problem. They're about to kill this young man, Musa. So what happens? His sister arranges a deal to save his life in exchange for Musa joining his brother Harun in service to Pharaoh. Remember, Pharaoh, as I explained, had already hired Harun as an ideologue, an orator, a perfect person who speaks religion, but in support of the ruler. Are we familiar with these models these days? Yeah, many countries have that. Many countries have that. And some of them who don't claim to be religious countries also use such tricks and tactics. So he eventually, Musa, awakens to the horrible mistake he made, and he runs away to relearn Ibrahim's way. He understands people have deviated from the original way of Ibrahim. Which way of Ibrahim? To separate religion from any kind of group control or mass control, or opportunities to be abused by the rulers for mass control. Fast forward again. What happened after Musa succeeds in bringing this to the attention of the masses of Bani Isra'il in Misr? They come out from that way of thinking. Allah rewards Musa and those who came out with a new scripture. A new scripture to do what? Well, Musa figured out that we have to have a new this slide. Musa figures out that there is a need for a political system, but it's a political system that does not risk abuse by the state. So you understand, that does not risk to be used by the head of the state. So he devises the model of the so-called divinely guided king. We speak of that model in philosophy and political science as the philosopher king. So that model was introduced by Musa, and Musa asked Allah to help him. Allah grants him this, and the manual for how these things are run is included in what's called the Torah. So the Torah becomes the manual, okay? So what do we call those divinely guided kings that Musa thought about? The idea from Musa is, instead of selecting the political leader and he's in charge of religion, let's select the religious leader first, the divinely guided leader, and he's in charge of the state. So flipping the order of things, in the mind of Musa, was a good solution. So the Torah came to institutionalize that way of thinking. That's why in the Quran we have the Nabiyyun, different than the Anbiya. The Nabiyyun, the term Nabiyyun, we translate it as prophets, is different than Anbiya. Anbiya before Musa, Nabiyyun during the period of the Torah. So the Torah became the manual for these, or how these Nabiyyun should function. And the system had several conditions attached to it. First, we need to understand that there is a covenant. There's a covenant with Musa and his followers that you are going to follow this covenant. The covenant included several things. I'm just going to summarize. And by the way, that is what the Ark of the Covenant is. That is what the ship that saves people from drowning in the sea of confusion is all about. That's exactly what it is. So the Ark of the Covenant necessitate that one Nabi after another, in a complete chain, in a continuous chain, one after another, all of them divinely guided, all of them prepared properly by the Malaika and with the support of Jibril. Jibril became Jibril, aka Musa in his afterlife. We've talked about this before on this channel. And then Jibril became the chaperone, the mentor for all of these Nabiyyin, one after another. What happens if they don't follow the orders? They get destroyed. That's part of the punishment authority that was given to Jibril. Okay, what else? People, the population, had to commit to a godly life in absolute obedience to the Nabiyyun. Of course, they are owed direct obedience. What else? Bani Isra'il, the people, the followers of Musa, commit to a community proffered not just to their own self-interest, to benefit all mankind, especially those people they can reach who are around them. So, kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. That's what the Quran is talking about. Them, Bani Israel at that time, they were brought out as the best community for mankind. Yeah, they were supposed to bring all of this divine knowledge and spread it among mankind. What did they do? We'll talk about it in the next slide. What else? There was one more extremely important condition. A new Nabi. How does the community recognize a new Nabi is sanctioned or approved by Allah? The answer is there was a secret locution, secret code language that only the Nabiyyun would understand, plus a handful of leaders, religious leaders, who were the keepers, the gatekeepers, so to speak, the keepers of secrets. So when a new Nabi claims he is sent by Allah, he has to provide his evidence that he was really selected by Allah by showing them, telling them, this is the language, this is the code, and this limited select group of people, of gatekeepers, would approve of that, and the whole community understand they are given a new king. So these are the general conditions. What's next? So then this is the Torah. After that we go to number 7. Number 7, sorry, I'm jumping ahead in here. Bani Isra'il. Number 7, after a while, made some mistakes, as is expected for any kind of human society, but there are some serious, significant mistakes they made. Number 1, they kept the divine knowledge a secret to themselves. They did not share it as they were supposed to. And we all know there are secret tomes, and there's secret knowledge that was not shared for the longest times in the history of Bani Isra'il. What else? They started claiming to be God's chosen people. Understand this. So what started as selected to be servants to the rest of mankind, to be sort of the teachers to the rest of mankind, they converted that into a selection of an ethnic supremacy. To this day, if you go against their their claims, or you say anything against what they say in the media, you're immediately accused of being anti-Semitic. What is anti-Semitic? Anti-Semitic means you're opposed to this ethnic idea that they are a select ethnic group. So they made themselves God's chosen ethnicity. A big mistake, never intended by Musa initially. Furthermore, there was a class of clergy that called themselves elite now, because they controlled who becomes the king, who does not become the king. You understand? Human tendencies started creeping into the behavior of this community of Bani Isra'il. Well, over the hundreds and thousands of years. The clergy class develops and are inflicted by corruption. What else? Allah punishes them several times to try to bring them back, to remind them. And as we are told in the Quran, they remain obstinate and do not change. So the Quran has a lot of stories about these people. Yeah, because the Quran is concerned in addressing them to show them all of their history and what they have done, and why the next step, as we're going to see the next step. So in the next step, we see that Zakaria comes on the scene, and this is an amazing part. I'm going to go over it really quick, this one and the next part, and then we're going to come back and address them in details, inshallah. So Zakaria comes on the scene. What happens with Zakaria? Zakaria, we're told about him in Surah 19 and Surah 3, and we're told about him also in Surah Luqman, not given by name, but those who understand, and we've talked about this before, those who understand see very easily that the reference is very, very much to Zakaria and his son Yahya. Again, we'll talk more in details. What happened with Zakaria? He realizes that the corruption is deeply rooted beyond repair. He is addressed by the Malaika that a new plan is in the works. A new plan for what? Well, remember, this happened long after Musa, and after all of the corruption has accumulated among Bani Isra'il, and they no longer have access to the Torah, and they no longer following the original teachings based on the Ark of the Covenant. So what happens? He's addressed by the Malaika. A new plan is in the works. We're going to give you all of the details and all the evidence. He supplicates for a progeny that is properly trained to be among the Salihin. What is Salihin? The original way of Ibrahim. This is where Maryam comes in. Maryam comes to be under his protection. Allah shows Zakaria that the Malaika are teaching directly Maryam without the need for any intermediaries, Nabiyun or otherwise. He wakes up, he says, the new system has already started. There's a plan that's changing from the past. He is instructed by the Malaika to take Maryam as a zawj, a wife, if you want. They didn't call it wife at that time. She agrees, and she becomes the mother, not just of one child, of two children. We've talked about all of this in the series about Isa ibn Maryam and Yahya and all of these details. Eventually, as we have shown in that series, he comes out against his community openly, because he's telling them there's a new plan in the works. So he came out against his community. فَخَرَجَ عَلَى قَوْمِهِ. Eventually we know that he's killed, he disappears off the scene, and Maryam is encouraged to run away. This is where we are. So the next step is Isa ibn Maryam. So fast forward again, maybe 20, 30, 40 years, we don't know. After Zakaria, Maryam escapes to raise Isa ibn Maryam away from Bani Isra'il. She raises Isa ibn Maryam with all the knowledge she learned from Zakaria, and she taught Zakaria. She was receiving independent knowledge, remember that. And she also learned about the Torah from Zakaria and directly from Allah. She taught all of this to Isa. At the right time, Isa returns to Bani Israel as a counterexample to them. Rasulan وَجَعَلْنَاهُ مَثَلًا لِبَنِي Isra'il. That means a counterexample for Bani Isra'il. He shows them, perhaps in inflammatory ways, in irritating ways, he shows them how their practices have deviated from the teachings of the original Torah. Very obvious, very clear. And he is rejected by Bani Isra'il as could be expected. And Bani Isra'il after him are punished. Again, the same theme repeats. There's a lot more detail. I'm going to share with you, inshallah, at the right time, a lot more detail about all of these issues. We continue to stage number 10. Muhammad, fast forward now. Long after Isa, 600 years, 500 years after Isa. The last of the Nabiyun. Remember, Isa did not come to tell them, I'm a Nabi like you. He came to tell them, your system is wrong. He didn't come to try to change the system. He tried to prove to them their system is beyond repair. And he brought with him the locution, the secret code. Remember the secret code? He brought with him the secret code, which baffled them. Said, where did you learn this from? There's no way. And we don't even know you. We don't know your father. You're not claiming that your father is Zakaria. He did not claim that his father is Zakaria. And therefore we don't know who you are. Where are you getting this? So among themselves, they knew it's over. They knew it's over. Okay? Allah gave them more time. Muhammad comes on the scene. He is the last of the Nabiyun. He knows the secret code. He talks to them, and the Quran is full of it. That's where we're deciphering the Abrahamic locution, the secret code. We're getting it from the Quran. The Quran explains it. So they couldn't say Muhammad was not a Nabi, but they wouldn't accept him anyway. Most of them, I should say. Still, he is a divinely guided king based on their definition of Nabiyun. Under the laws of the Torah, he applies the laws of the Torah to them and to himself. Some accept him, others reject him, and he applies the Torah laws to those who fight him, and eventually he declares officially the expiration of the divinely guided king's system, meaning the Nabiyun system. So we should not refer to Muhammad as a Nabi. He himself was the last, and Khatam, he sealed it. He sealed it, that means the whole system is no longer in use. So what's the new system? The new system is the Quran. The Quran supersedes the Torah, of course, because the Torah was never meant to be preserved. Listen carefully, the Torah was never meant to be preserved, which was eventually lost and rewritten from memory, and you all know that. 600 years it was disappeared. So when the Quran came, it is the permanent scripture. It is the final system. After humanity had tried the system of Musa and obviously failed, Isa ibn Maryam tried to correct them. They wouldn't listen. But he was not meant to change them. He was just meant to show them, like to hold up a mirror, to show them how erroneous they are in their practices, how ugly their practices have become, and how desperately irreplaceable, irreparable the system of prophethood was. So the Quran came with the final scripture. It repeatedly encourages each person to consider himself or herself the first believer. What does that mean? The first believer, like Ibrahim. Like Ibrahim. Don't worry about the rest. Don't worry about others. What does that mean? A direct one-on-one relationship with Allah. Direct communication with Allah. That's the old covenant. That's the first covenant between Allah and Ibrahim when he promised him to be an imam, when he promised him to be an ummah of one. Now every one of us is like Ibrahim, an ummah of one, if we follow the Quran correctly. What are you saying, Dr. Hani? Organized religion? Yeah, that's exactly what the title of this series is. The trouble with organized religion. And we're going to hear it and we're going to see it directly from the Quran. The final scripture is the Quran. It is to be preserved, listen carefully, by the malaika, by the angels, not by human beings. In the Quran, the malaika take charge of preserving the scripture. If you start hearing people saying, oh, the early companions are the ones who preserved the scripture of the Quran, they don't understand anything about the Quran. And they're violating some key teachings of the Quran. Okay, finally, we come to the time of restoration. What is the time of restoration? Well, that's Yawmul Qiyamah, as they told us. Yawmuddin. Well, Yawmul Qiyamah literally means time of restoration, Yawm al-Qiyamah, restore, Qiyamah, from aqama, which means to restore, to repair. That's when the Quran finally has a chance to be applied without the oppressive dominance of the state, of any state. I hope you understand how beautiful this timing is and why now. We did not have this chance until now. We really didn't. We didn't have the tools. We didn't have the instruments of mass communication, the instruments of research. All of these things are now available. Yeah, it makes sense. Is this Yawm al-Qiyamah? Perhaps. Allah knows. But this is the definition. Those who understand it and are sincere receive direct guidance from the divine, just like Ibrahim, and just like Ibrahim was promised. He is an imam, a leader, not necessarily a political leader or a group leader, a leader as an exemplar. I hope it makes sense. Those who believe direct guidance, who receive direct guidance from Allah are called as-sa'a. We refer to them as the irrigators, those who receive the divine water and spread it over the Quran to share the knowledge with others and to explain the Quran in ways that are God inspired by God. And those who receive the evidence but reject, those who receive the evidence but reject, sorry, this should be but. I know I'm running over the 10 minutes, but please bear with me. They will not be given another chance at restoration. Makes perfect sense, because you're seeing the evidence in front of you and you're rejecting the evidence. I'm not saying this presentation is the evidence. I'm saying the 194 segments that we presented are full of evidence. And what else? Those who did not receive the evidence, meaning they didn't have a chance to be exposed to this evidence, shall be given a chance during Hisab, which is a period after life. It's called the period of Hisab, the time of rehabilitation. They're given another chance to learn, but it's a lot more difficult at that time. This is what I have. This is the presentation that we have, and inshallah you have enjoyed it. I wanted to give you a chance to see the helicopter view. You will get to listen to this again. That's all I want to present today. I know you have a lot of questions. Please don't leave this session before you open YouTube again and this video, and put some comments below. Please put your questions below. I want to hear how this new format is being received. I want to hear from all of you. Please put the comment. And if you enjoyed this, I know this was really fast, but I promise you in the future parts of the series, we're going to present a lot more evidence and a lot more details, one stage at a time, as I laid out the plan at the beginning of this presentation. So please subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our website, which is shown right here on the right hand side, and then include some comments below. And of course, if you like it, smash that like button. I would really appreciate it. And inshallah, YouTube and Google and other search engines would know that this is knowledge that should be spread out. Thank you very much for watching. Assalamu alaikum.